We have just witnessed how the Lakers dominated and sent the Houston Rockets home after their second round series, and it isn't a secret that a lot of this has got to do with the Rockets' small ball type of offense, which surely didn't work out well with a team that has got bigs who consistently rebound and guys who attack the paint. Well, the Rockets have the best offensive player in the league in James Harden, who has been pretty much the same high-scoring offensive juggernaut as always, despite having some forgettable games in the series. And of course, there's his newly acquired running mate and longtime pal Russell Westbrook. And while there are no surprises here, with the Rockets finishing second in the league in scoring once again as expected, they ended the season having just the 23rd ranking defense in the league. And somewhere in his mind, General Manager Daryl Morey has got to be asking himself, are these guys we have actually the right pieces to build around James Harden and his style of play? Or better yet, is Russell Westbrook really a good fit alongside him when trying to run that small ball lineup who just loves the three ball so much? And if not, is it really a good option once and for all to move Russell Westbrook in exchange for the right offers as soon as this summer? What's good guys, my name is Riro Creer, and in this video, let's try to look at all the possibilities involving this Russell Westbrook scenario in Houston and what could the near future possibly hold for this team while moving forward around James Harden. Looking back at the 2018 Western Conference Finals, the Rockets looked like they were about to end the Warriors' title run. But then, Chris Paul got hurt and we knew how that ended. Because overall, they really had a scary team back then which did great on both ends of the floor, as the team had the best offense in the league plus the 6th best defensive rating. But fast forward a year after, in the 2019 playoffs, the Rockets seem to have lost their grit despite still having the 2nd best offense in the NBA, as their defensive rating dropped to 17th place in the league. Ultimately, they lost again to the Warriors, this time in the second round, and most likely, the struggles they had that season has got to do with the departure of Trevor Ariza and Luke Baumute, who were two of their best perimeter defenders. Well, I just can't help but imagine what it would have looked like if they got Robert Covington just a little bit earlier while still having Clint Capella on the team that season. And honestly, I think they certainly would have a better shot to win that second round series against Golden State if they just had those two on the floor with Chris Paul and Harden, considering how banged up the Warriors kinda look like in that postseason. But moving on, we all know how the Chris Paul James Harden thing played out after being bounced by the Warriors in consecutive seasons. And to cut the long story short, the Westbrook trade happened after Houston sent CP3 to Oklahoma City together with 2 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps. And understandably, that was an exciting time for a Rockets team who had just secured one of Harden's best buddies and another superstar to play with him. But it still kinda baffles me to this day as to why the Rockets pulled the trigger on this trade that quickly. Well yeah, it's pretty safe to argue that there is a lot more upside with a 31-year-old perennial all-star in Westbrook than that of an aging Chris Paul. But right by the get-go, any fan who was aware of how this Houston Rockets team played knew that there were obvious red flags regarding Westbrook's fit with the Rockets offense. Because just by looking at the numbers, Chris Paul shot 37% from 3 in his 2 seasons with the Rockets combined, while on the other hand, Russell Westbrook consistently shot below 30% from deep in his last 2 years with the Thunder. And in the 2019-2020 regular season, Westbrook's outside shooting just got worse as he just made 26% of his threes while trying to thrive in a 3-point heavy Mike D'Antoni system. And well yeah, General Manager Daryl Morey was known to be a proponent of analytics and all that, but did he just ignore the simple numbers which were right in front of him when he did this trade? And as the Houston Rockets 2020 playoff run was being endangered, I guess we can agree that the Russell Westbrook-Chris Paul trade just looked more and more lopsided as ever. Looking at Russell Westbrook's numbers during the 2019-2020 regular season, there is no arguing that he has been a legit all-around threat next to Harden, and is one of the reasons why they are still a borderline top 4 team in the West. Well, the Brodie averaged 27.2 points, 7.9 rebounds, and 7 assists on a steady 47% shooting from the field for the season. But the problem comes with his terrible 26% shooting from the 3-ball, which also happens to be the 2nd lowest 3-point percentage of his career, next only to his sophomore season. And if you're playing in a James Harden tailored system which expects shooters to do pretty well, such poor clip from behind the arc is simply unacceptable, especially for a team's secondary star. And in the 2020 playoffs, it became more apparent that Westbrook's fit with the small ball lineup became more and more of a question mark, as he recorded all career lows in points per game, player efficiency rating, offensive and defensive box plus minus, and overall win shares. Overall, Westbrook tallied negative .6 offensive win shares, negative .3 defensive win shares, and negative .2 overall win shares in the postseason. And it's just eye-opening if you compare those numbers with Chris Paul's 2019 playoffs advanced statistics during his last run in Houston, which showed the point guard total .5 offensive win shares, .6 defensive win shares, and a total of 1.1 win shares, all of which are superior numbers compared to that of Westbrook's. Well, in my opinion, CP3's skill set fit Houston's system much better because he had superior shooting and basketball IQ compared to Russ. Plus, he was a master of the pick and roll, which helped him generate offense during those times when Harden didn't necessarily produce much. To put it simply, at least during his first year in Houston, Russ looked like he can't play his natural style and expect the Rockets to win a lot of games deep in the playoffs when defenses are much more prepared and rotations are much shortened. And if you're Daryl Morey, it's just a question of until when are you willing to risk building around James Harden the wrong way. Because the way I look at it, more than anything, I feel like Harden can't really thrive with a player like Westbrook if they're gunning for a championship. At least not in this kind of ISO-heavy system that Mike D'Antoni loves to run. And realistically, I feel like if they trade Russ this offseason, they'd get pretty good value out of him and surround Harden with other solid defenders, which I think they need. Plus, they'd have the cap space to go after a legit big man, who I believe is what could propel this team further with James Harden in the long run. And just to put it out there, I'm actually a really big Russell Westbrook fan since his early years in Oklahoma City, and I wish the guy nothing but the best. And I strongly believe that if he gets traded to the right team, then he can once again establish himself as a primary superstar who can lead the franchise into the playoffs without compromising much of his game. And well, his huge contract with still 3 years and more than $132 million salary remaining could be a problem, but surely there are teams who are still in need of a viable superstar while having the cap space to sign him. And well, a prime example of that I think is the Knicks. And among every other team who's been looking for a marketable star, the Knicks probably have the most assets to trade for Russ both in cap space and roster flexibility. And with the organization entering a new era of Knicks basketball, they just might view Russ as the first big star who can help New York become contenders once again. Well, we don't exactly know how Thibodeau and management view their young pieces, but theoretically, I think that they can straight up send Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, Frank Ntilikina, and Dennis Smith Jr. to Houston in exchange for Russ. And who knows, acquiring Westbrook might be enough for them to attract a couple of other free agents these next 2 off seasons, which would set them up for contention once again. And if I were Houston, I'd take that trade in a heartbeat if I'm already convinced that Russ isn't the right star to play alongside Harden in the long run. And come to think of it, if Miami doesn't get to win it all this year, and if by this offseason, Pat Riley is still as sold on Russ as he was in the summer of 2019, well guess what? The Heat also have the cap space to make a trade for him work. And let's face it, a big three of Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Russell Westbrook is going to be one of the scariest and most dynamic trios in the league. But most likely, they'd have to prepare a package which would have to include Andre Iguodala, Tyler Hero, Kelly Olynyk, and possibly a first rounder to make that trade possible. But I think this Miami trade is less likelier to happen considering that they might have bigger things in mind pertaining to the 2021 free agency, aka the Giannis sweepstakes, or they just might not be willing to part ways with the potential star in Tyler Hero. Well, there are tons of other teams who are in need of a legit superstar like Russ for sure, but ultimately, it will all boil down to Houston saying yes to the right pieces who they think would be ideal fits next to James Harden. Also, the Beard is already 31 years old at the moment, and while it doesn't seem that he's slowing down in any way at this point, it also might be the right time for the Rockets management to consider looking long-term in terms of the franchise's direction moving forward. And since Mike D'Antoni has just parted ways with the team, I guess anything is possible at this time. But as of the moment, This Rocket squad will remain as James Harden's team, and honestly, I believe that he doesn't even need another quote-unquote superstar to carry the load with him, considering his ISO-loving playing style which requires him to hold the ball a huge chunk of the time. And I'm dead serious when I say that I even think that he's just a few borderline all-stars away from making it to the NBA Finals at this point in his career. I think the Rockets just need to surround him with the right guys, and I believe Harden is just, say, a Drew Holiday and an Andre Drummond away from seriously leading Houston to at least a championship appearance in the next few years. Thank you for sticking until the end of the video, and if you've enjoyed this one, please help me promote my content by subscribing to the channel. It would be a great help for me as a new content creator. And if you want to hear about anything NBA on the channel, then feel free to hit me up on the comment section to let me know. Also, don't forget to smash the like button, or better yet, share the video so we can spread the word. Again, this is Riro, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.